So this is the Google Pixel 7. It has arguably one of the best smartphone cameras. What's up, y'all? We are now behind the scenes, behind the camera. I'm going to give you guys a just rundown as to what my thought processes are when shooting these photos, because this is a photography channel and we care a lot about how we shoot the photos. First of all, I just want to apologize because it's kind of a hard time to see the screen while we're shooting. Not sure why, but yeah. And this is actually one of the photos I really liked. I think using this as a 14mm wide angle was a good choice because we're able to exaggerate a lot more of the sky, make it feel a lot wider, and just generally create a good photo. But using this phone has been a really interesting experience. And I think the fact that it has a 14mm wide angle is honestly very nice, and I've been using it a lot, even in situations like this where I am shooting a long exposure and we capture an image like this. And I love shooting long exposures because I feel like they're incredibly interesting. It's another level of expression that I really like, and this is a technique I use a lot in my landscape photography. But as you saw there's a transition from an unedited to an edited photo, and usually when there's two of those photos, that means that it was edited. But as you can tell, there actually wasn't a huge difference in terms of the unedited versus edited version, mainly because I feel like the JPEGs actually did a really good job at processing the image and making sure that, you know, it looks good. And that's one thing that I think this Google Pixel does really well. Straight out of camera, you can essentially use a photo without having to feel like you gotta edit it or alter it in any way, because generally speaking, it does a great job. But right here, I actually use the magic eraser to remove this fire hydrant in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see that disappear, and a small edit made to this photo. But I generally think that, you know, you don't need to edit these photos except for situations like that where you actually want to go ahead and remove things. Now here, I was actually using the 2x telephoto because I just want to see how it came out, and it was alright. It wasn't absolutely mind-blowing, but I think it did a decent job. I definitely don't want to be using it a whole lot because it is a digital zoom versus an optical zoom, and optical will always be better. So right here, I think this is a really interesting spot to actually use the wide angle. I think it's really interesting because we can exaggerate more of this tarp up top, and then we bring in the edited version, as you can see here. Not a huge change, but I generally like the composition of the photo, and it leads your eyes more into the center of the frame because this tarp on top. So we're gonna go ahead and move on here. And the next photo I'm gonna be actually taking is a portrait mode of these leaves here. Now for me, I actually really enjoy nature photography, generally speaking, but we're gonna try the portrait mode. But I kind of felt like the computational photography side of things fell apart because it just didn't do a good job at outlining what my exact subject matter was. But that's kind of difficult. I mean, I know it is difficult, but again, those are limitations of computational photography. So right here, we're gonna actually using the reflection to go ahead and, you know, create a much more interesting photo here. And as you can see, we have these kind of like blurred out parts of it. And here's the edited version. I really like this edit a lot. I think this is where the edit actually made a lot of sense. But I like doing this because the reflections you get with the photo are definitely more interesting. With that being said, let's jump right back and talk about some specs and take a little break. We are back with some more POV photography, and I wanted a little bit of a change of scenery. As you see, we can actually see the phone a little bit better, but we want to change scenery, so I'm going to be shooting some of these like houses over here. More of this 14mm wide angle stuff, and a slight edit. As you can see, we're just bringing down the shadows very slightly, as well as bringing down the highlights very slightly. I feel like there didn't need to be much of a change, but yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and just move over slightly and capture what I can. And for me, I really like that 14mm. We're able to exaggerate the sky more. A little bit of that distortion makes it just a much more interesting image. So there's the edit right there. And then we're gonna go ahead and move on. And I wanna try another portrait mode because I really wanna see how this thing actually is. So we're gonna have a little bit more of a prominent subject in this flower, and go ahead and capture that. I think it does a bit of a better job because the phone actually knows exactly what the subject matter is in the flower, and the outline is just a little bit better, much more pleasing. So we're gonna go ahead and move on here. Next photo I really want to capture is across the street, as you can see. And don't worry guys, we're not invading anyone's privacy. I mean, this is all open to the public, so you're allowed to do this kind of stuff. But I'm taking a long exposure here just because I want to see what it does. In the sense that I want to see like how the image is first of all going to come out when there's not a definite subject matter to be had when it comes to long exposure. I generally think it does a decent job. I mean, of course, I wish we were able to get a long exposure in which the sky was moving, but you know, we don't really have that option here. So we're going to take in the last photo of the day. As you see, I'm zooming in and kind of seeing like what exactly happened with that long exposure because I kind of saw stuff at the edges. But we're going to take one last photo of the day here where I want to get a bit of a vertical image, 14mm of this house, and then using this sidewalk as a foreground subject matter just to kind of create some more depth to the image. So this is the last photo we're gonna end on, and I generally think it's a decent photo. I mean, it's not amazing, but I love using the 14mm focal length. I mean, it's just such an amazing focal length, and we're able to get much more interesting images out of it. So yeah, guys, that's the end of the POV stuff. Here are the two photos that I really liked. I love this photo of the reflection. I think it's a great composition overall. And we're able to use a lot more of those leading subject matters that move your eyes from the left to the right because of the chairs and tables, as well as these little lampshades. But also I really enjoy this one of the black dot coffee because I don't know, it's the way the building is, and also I'm just a fan of coffee. Anyways, guys, we're going to go back to my studio where I'm going to be talking about my full review and thoughts on the Google Pixel 7. So they can be a little over-processed in terms of the HDR. Sometimes it can go a little overboard in the sharpening. But overall, I genuinely like the photos out of this. I think we have really nice punchy contrast. The colors are very Google Photos with just the JPEG versus the original. And you can see there's just such a marginal difference. And if you are that kind of person that cares about that 1%, now I really want to talk about the zooming and so forth, and the different cameras that are actually on this Google Pixel. First of all, 2 times versus 1 is just a 1 time, and 2 times is a digital zoom. And as you can tell, as we zoom in, the 2 times does not look nearly as good detail and more, or just a better photo overall. We cannot access that here in the Google Pixel 7, which is honestly a huge letdown. Bokeh, no portrait mode or nothing. And I feel like the photos actually come out pretty good, but this is only when the shutter will be open for a lot less time. Whereas if there's less things moving around, you will have to leave the shutter open for quite some time. The thing that I don't really like is that you can't actually determine how long you want these shutters to stay open or closed, and actually moving the frame in terms of the camera itself, it needs to know what is moving. But the other thing is that you have to be panning along with the actual subject itself, or you're not going to get anything. But overall, the action pan actually works pretty well. But now let's talk about portrait mode. And I know this is an area that a lot of people have been looking forward to, and honestly, I'm a little disappointed in it. Because here's the thing, this is kind of a similar story to the motion mode, but if it doesn't know what exactly you are trying to do the portrait mode of, it's gonna have a really hard time actually cleaning up the other parts of the image. Because what it essentially does is it takes a photo and then determines what you actually put your focus on and then blurs out the rest of it. And the problem is the camera actually has to determine what is in focus and what is going to be blurred, and sometimes it has a really hard time doing that if it's a very busy scene. I feel like the focus from the in focus to the out of focus, the transition is not really that smooth. It's not going to be as smooth as an actual camera with an f1 ISO, making our photos a little bit grainier. But with night mode, because we're able to take a longer exposure, we're able to have reduced noise and a cleaner image overall, and actually does a really good job, as you can see here. Honestly, I don't have that many things to say about night mode action pans that we simply were not able to get before. And overall, I feel like Google Pixel 7 are incredibly good. They're second to none, to be honest. I loved using the wide angle. The 14mm on the wide end is absolutely fantastic. I mean, that is my favorite focal length in all of photography, and I just love taking photos with it. And everything from the colors to the contrast to how the camera actually moved to the 7, there is definitely an improvement in terms of the quality of the glass itself, as well as the different computational creative side of things, like the long exposure and the action pans. Those are cool things that I just didn't have access to before. But is it gonna replace my Nikon Z6, which is my professional mirrorless camera, anytime soon? The answer is a resounding no. It simply just can't do the things that my regular camera can do. When it takes photos like portraits as well as long exposure, it looks incredibly natural, whereas that has all of the data that the camera sensor is able to read. And what we're able to get is more detail, more dynamic range, as well as just better colors that are more natural. And so